It's going to the cloud. Thank you, Erica. Have a lovely evening. Ed, I can't hear you.
I haven't said anything yet.
Your microphone may be muted. Let me just.
I'm here.
Hi, Nat. Let me just collapse everything. And
Hillary's trying to get on.
yeah, let me just collapse.
I just emailed Hillary.
Yeah, my email.
Lee, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
I just wasn't talking.
I'll explain all. What I'm going to do is send a note to Alan.
I'm here.
Okay. Can you send an email to everybody saying that we're actually up and running? And there's Rick. Okay.
Hey, guys.
So folks, very quickly, there are 2 town Zoom accounts. And our meeting was on Zoom 1, and I was trying to log into Zoom 3, and I didn't realize, because Zoom 3 was the latest one that had been sent to me. So I've got, this is informal, by the way, me, Alan, Ed Gillum, Matt Lowell, Rick Atherton. Is there anybody else on the call?
No greater.
Hi, Bill. And apologies to everybody.
All right, sunset where Bill is, I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's what has to happen. We have to be a little bit more formal than normal. So Alan will read the roll and I'll double check that I've got everybody here. Okay with you, Alan?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Bill Grader,
Here.
Rick Atherton,
Here.
Lee, yes, Nat Lowell,
Here, thank you.
Snooky Eldridge, Leslie Forbes, and Ed Gillum.
At your service here.
Yeah, Leslie had a doctor's appointment. She said she couldn't be here. And Hillary, I think, is still trying to get in.
Let me message her again.
Okay, so with 6 people, we have got a quorum. And folks, the reason for being formal is I'm asked to record this. And if some absolute officialdom decides to compare the recording with my minutes, and I say, oh, by the way, we did it by roll call vote. And he said, oh, no, you didn't. Alan, it's yours. I don't have anybody. Let me just check participants. Thank you, Rick. You turned off your light.
The one above. I'm testing.
Okay, great.
Okay. I don't have anybody.
Yeah, let me call the meeting to order. Trying to get that, Rick?
No, I want to mute it and say, go
All
away.
right. Okay, uh-oh. Okay, I call the meeting of the Roads and Right-of-Way Commission to order for Tuesday, June 21st, 2020. I declare we have a quorum present. And public comment, I don't believe we have any public comment.
Alan, that's correct. I checked the participant list. It's just the 6 of us.
I just emailed Hillary the link, so hopefully she can make it work.
Thank you, Nat.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mailed it to her also.
Okay.
Or forwarded it to her email. So, okay, the first order of business today, and I apologize for the delay start here. First order of business is the annual reorganization of the committee.
Actually, it's minutes on. Sorry about that.
Okay, are we?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of June 16th.
Seconded,
Okay, any
Ed Gillum,
discussion?
second.
yes.
Okay, Alan, we gotta go through the whole process.
I'm sorry?
You have to roll call.
Okay, yeah, roll call. We have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes from June 16th. Bill Greeter, how do you vote?
Aye.
Alan Reinhardt, aye. Rick,
Aye.
Lee,
And I for Lee.
Nat,
Aye.
and Ed. Ed?
Aye.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have approval of the.
Alan
Yes.
Reinhardt? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Would you face your microphone dead on and then you come through quite clearly? Well, we all turn our heads, but when you turn your head, it gets a little crackly.
Oh, okay. Thank you for
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
reminding me of that. Okay, the minutes are from the 16th are approved. The next item on the agenda is the annual reorganization of the committee and the election of officers for fiscal year 21. And by the way, let me just preface this by saying we're down to 8 members now because Bert decided not to renew, because of his job and all that sort of thing. So we do have an opening on the committee. If you can think of anyone who would be a good member of the committee, feel free to, invite them to contact, tell them what we do or, that sort of thing. All right, in terms of the committee reorganization, the election of officers, is there anyone who would like to propose an office or a slate of officers?
I would make a motion to keep the officers as is, the same as they are now for 2020. Well, whatever we're calling this next year, I guess, 2020 and a half, then 2021.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah,
I don't really know what to say anymore.
I know, it's the fiscal year 21.
Fiscal year
What we're in.
21, there you
That
go.
starts in January.
It's fiscal 21.
Yeah,
Fiscal 21.
Yeah.
Okay, Pat,
I know.
I've got that, but the officers, I just want to make sure everybody is up to speed. Alan is chair. Is Leslie vice chair?
Yes,
And then I'm secretary, and I'm happy to do that.
right. Okay, good. And seeing how Leslie isn't here to defend herself, all right.
We can revisit that if she has a problem,
Yeah.
right,
Exactly.
Alan? I mean, we're not, this isn't the Board of Selectmen, so.
Okay,
Select board.
we need a second.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second for,
Reader, second.
okay, Bill Grader seconds that motion. Discussion on the motion. Lee?
Roll call vote.
Oh, right. No, okay. Well, I was going to call for discussion before I called the roll call.
Well, yeah, if anybody wants to speak.
Yeah. Seeing none. I would just comment that if there's anyone who wants to step forward into the chairman or vice chairman position, don't hesitate to let me know. All right, so we have a motion and a second, and let me go down the list again. Either aye or nay. Bill Greeter,
Aye.
Alan Reinhardt, aye. Rick,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Nat,
Aye.
Snooky is not here, Leslie is not here, and Ed Gillum.
Aye.
Good.
Aye.
Okay, we have a slate of officers for the coming fiscal year. Now, one of the things that I like to do at the beginning of the turnover here is to kind of focus on where we are, what we're doing, and basically the projects list. We have a projects list, and I'd like to think we have some goals for the committee. Our primary reason for existence, of course, is to assist in public way issues, as we've been doing for a number of years. Let me see how I want to do this. First, any suggestions from the committee as to things that you would like us to be focused on? Are there projects that we're working on that need to be brought forward or anything like that? Anyone have any ideas on that?
Yeah, I have a quick
Nat?
comment, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
And all of us know about all this. So, like, I've been fortunate to be able to, participate a little bit with the Traffic Safety Committee.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very flattered to be able to see the agenda and weigh in occasionally. And the other day we had that Appleton Road parking issue. I think you're aware of that, right, Alan? The lady sent all those pictures in.
Oh,
I think it's number like it's the whole rock issue and so forth. And I just want to Art's the chair now, and he's doing a really good job. But without Mike, it's sort of like everybody's a staff person, or somebody has to sort of step up to be that sort of staff type person. You know what I mean, Alan?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's and I think that this group should be sort of, when those things come in, and that issue is a big deal right now with these rocks, and people don't understand road layout. They don't understand private roads. They don't understand that they don't technically own the land to the center line. They may have rights to the center line, but they don't own it. It's complicated, and people, you know how that is. You've been dealing with that for years. And I just think that. Yes, Lee.
Could you spell out for me? I heard Appleton Road. I heard rocks. I suspect it has to do with shoulders and space. But could you be very specific so I get it right on the notes?
Well, I'm just talking about encroachments in general, but I brought that one up because it was the last one that was discussed. And we essentially drafted that policy. This body did, but it crosses over to the Traffic Safety Committee, and it's sort of a complicated sort of conundrum to deal with. And I think Rob McNeil is working diligently on this to try to find a solution to all the different ones. And all I'm saying is, Alan, we should try to keep track of that agenda item, when it comes up, for us to have weigh in on it as well. That's all I'm saying. So maybe communicating with Erica and keeping that sort of as sort of a separate, like flagging them is all I'm saying, Alan. You know what I mean?
Alan, can you discuss the encroachment?
Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, Lee.
Okay, we were talking about encroachments in, God only knows where, some other meeting. Cemetery Commission. It's my understanding that Rob McNeil and Ken Bogran get together weekly to discuss encroachments. And that's my phone, and oh crap. Somebody will have to take a voicemail. Sorry about that, folks. So that they meet weekly, but they've only just started. I think they're in meeting 3 or 4. And so Nat's concern is timely, that we can say that we want to have some liaison between our committee and encroachment committee.
That's exactly right. And I forgot about Ken, and thank you for filling that in for me, Lee, as usual, always there. Because it's the issue is much more how do I say, it's technical, but we have someone that understands it now with Ken on board. And so, but I just don't want that stuff to fall by the wayside for this committee. That's all I'm saying. I think this needs to be a connection between the two groups to make sure that anything that we might want to check in on and weigh in on as a group to give a recommendation or something like that. That's all I'm saying, Alan.
Okay, no, I fully agree, Nat, with what you're saying. As you know, we've talked about encroachments
for years.
For years and years. And I have been in communication with Rob McNeil. With the Cemetery Commission, we had another issue and so on, but with some of these other issues over the years. Just to touch on your point about the loss of having anyone in charge of the
right.
You know, that
I know staff level. Right.
Yeah, the staff level, right. One of the things that I'm most concerned about are the missing sidewalks, particularly, we've talked again about Prospect Street, about Cliff Road, and about Pleasant Street, those three gaps there in the sidewalk. And Mike Burns was really the key person on those, as well as the way going up into Mill Hill Park to connect with the new subdivision up there. Mike was the sort of key person on all of those. I haven't been able to talk with Andrew to see what they're going to do to replace him and somebody with some ability.
Good. Not an easy position. It's
well,
it's become extremely diversified job with the way the state operates. I'm glad you just brought that up, Alan. I was just up at the Snell house off of 15 Wynn Street the other day.
Yes, right.
And talking to George's younger sister, and we talked about that connector that what you just brought up, the connector of the Chicken Hill Road. What's that called? Old Farm Road. Is that what they call it?
Yeah, Old Farm Road, right.
Yeah.
It's North Mill up to Old Farm.
Right, but I was talking to her about the coming down Mount Vernon, taking a left, and having the crosswalk eventually be at Wynn Street. And we had a nice chat about this, and you kind of just refreshed me a little on the Highland Ave to Sherburne Turnpike. That's what you were talking about on Cliff, that piece that's missing, and getting this all back on some sort of a list. And I think I reached out to Rob the other day a little bit about this, about helping on the planning department side of this and trying to sort of work together with him and for the next year or two to try to get some of these smaller things, back on the list, back on the radar. You know what I mean, Alan? And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. We had an opportunity to fix Prospect Street, and we all know what happened there. And I think that the sensitivity of that hasn't been forgotten with Rob when he first got on board here, when that was getting ground up and the water pipe and fixed. But he hasn't forgotten, and I think that we can, sort of maybe make a list of these things so we can kind of formalize it a little bit and get that back on some sort of program.
So I've got a question for anybody who's got good knowledge. Andrew presumably is asking somebody in his office to do essential, Mike Burns planning, because we've got things that have to be renewed. We've got paperwork that has to go in. Who's doing the follow-up for our?
This guy in office, the guy from the state is helping us a lot. His name is Derek Schuster. And this guy, Bill, I can't even think of his last name, the guy that works in the office, is sort of doing some of that stuff now. So it's kind of some different people working on it and doing the best they can to deal with that. Keeping the UPWP stuff. I know what you're talking about, Lee. You're talking about the state, the paperwork that has to be done in the,
Right.
in the
So
notification.
somebody's at least following up on that.
Yeah.
All right, I'll tell you what, let me interject here, and then I'll get to Bill. I'll get to you in just a moment. I'll follow up with Andrew to find out how the planning department is, how they're covering Mike's position. And I think maybe presenting him a list of our projects, for example, the missing sidewalks at Prospect Plus and Cliff Road.
Yeah.
Those are high on the list, as is finishing that bike route up to North Mill Street to Old Farm Road. Those are, I think, of all the work before our committee, that those are pretty high priority right there. Or in terms of the needs of the town, I would rank those pretty high. So what I'll do is develop a list of the those areas, and I'll contact Andrew. He's not an easy person to get in touch with nowadays, but I'll get in touch with Andrew, and I'll raise those with him, see what the plan is as far as replacing him. Bill, you had a question?
Well, more or less, it's a statement rather than a question. And so the Appleton Road situation, really, that's just a continuation of issues that have been going on. And
Right.
so the last one that we really visited in any depth was Washington Ave in Matticat, as well as Matticat Road. And Ken was brought into that. Rob was brought into it. Washington Ave had been surveyed. There's
Bill, I'm only picking up about half of what you're saying.
I can hear him.
I think it's your headset, Alan, Lee, because
I
I
got
could
you.
hear, when you said stuff was breaking up, I could hear these guys fine.
Yeah.
Okay, just get a little closer to the microphone. It's the song. Put your sweet lips a little closer to
If I
the
get any
phone.
closer, I'm going to be eating an apple. So the town looked into it. Encroachment has been identified. But then that was the end of the dialogue, getting back to this committee. That's the end of the dialogue, getting back to the citizens. And the Matticat Road one, which was a safety issue right across from F Street, where they encroached out onto the bike path and flooded the road every time. So finally, this past week, the abutter ripped up all his garden and redid it all. But it's been 7 months since we brought this to the town's notice, and no information back to this committee, no information back to the abutters, no information back to the residents. So I just find it extremely frustrating. Encroachment is a huge issue, which we all know, and it's not going to do any good to do lip service on behalf of the town to say we're going to have real estate look at it, and then we don't get any follow-up. So I think I'm at a point where I'm, calling it like it is, and I'm telling people that they need to contact the real estate department or the DPW, because the answers are not forthcoming. We had Millie's apply for outdoor seating and use town property. The town signed off on establishing a parking lot on residential property for a commercial entity without any hearing process. So COVID or not, there's rules that have to be followed, and there needs to be dialogue, and there needs to be some consistency. So I'll get off my soapbox, but.
Great. Okay, Bill, I agree with you in terms of the importance of the encroachments and the lack of communication back and forth. I take partly responsibility for that, because I'm, as chairman, I do try to speak to the principals. I speak with Rob McNeil on a fairly regular basis. I used to speak with Mike Burns on a regular basis. Ken Bogrand, we email a lot and that sort of thing. But I get your point, and I will try to follow up more attentively with them and convey whatever information I can glean from them. I do understand how the wheels of government turn very slowly and all that sort of thing, but I agree with you. There needs to be at least communication as to what's going and where. Okay, other comments? Ed, did you have a comment? Ed?
Ed's asleep. There he is.
Yeah. Hi, did you have a comment, Ed?
I was just listening.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I
comment.
said.
Alan, this is late.
No.
Because it's on the agenda. My little interest in railroads is very high. So you could just say that Lee mentioned railroads, and we'll get to it with the agenda item.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I do plan to get to that. I know Hillary is, I thought I saw her on just a moment ago. Hillary, are you with us?
She's there. She's just muted, but she's there. She hears us.
Oh, okay. Great. All right. In terms of the projects list review, so we have encroachments as one of our projects that needs follow-up. Let me quickly tick off what I know on our list.
Alan, apologies for interrupting. Hillary is on the call, and I'm asking her to unmute her microphone.
Yes, hi everybody. I'm here. I can hear you.
Oh, hi, Hillary. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks.
Sorry about the delay in getting off the ground here, but
Oh, that's okay. I was able to,
thanks to
get
Lee,
in.
we have Lee did yeoman duty. If it was left up to me, we wouldn't, well, never mind.
We had a generosity of town websites, and I was in the wrong one.
I see. Good. Okay, let me quickly run down our outstanding projects list and just summarize where I think we are, and any comments you want to make along the way, just raise your hand or interrupt. The Public Way Monument Project, we still have those monuments that are sitting behind two fairgrounds. I checked them again, and we have I forget, I think 6 upright ones and maybe 6 or 8 of in the ground of the flush ones in the ground. That's been halted. The upright monuments weigh about 300 to 400 pounds each. So we, when we did it before, we had a volunteer with a with a bobcat and trailer and all that sort of thing. In talking with Rob about it, he said that the DPW would be glad to help us with the installation of those monuments. But again, the DPW has been sort of focused on other issues over the last couple of months. So anyway, that is still a work in progress. We have a list of where those remaining monuments need to go. And it's really just a question of getting the DPW to coordinate with the installation of those monuments. The sidewalk projects we talked about earlier, Prospect Street, Cliff Road, Pleasant Street. Again, those are particularly, I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, as the population has grown for the summer, particularly on Cliff Road. As soon as people get to the end of the bike path, they're just dumped in the road. There's no sidewalk. There's no place for them to go other than the road. Same with pedestrians, same with moms with strollers or, that sort of thing. So those are 3 really key areas. They're high traffic areas, and basically bicycles and pedestrians are dumped into the road at all three of those places. So personally, those are very high on my list of things to get corrected. The Harbor Walk project, that's something I know we've talked about for, well, since 2008 when it was in our right-of-way improvement plan. And we did have some help from Remain. Remember, they had some engineers who actually mapped the route. They had maps of the route, who the property owners were, and all that sort of thing. So again, that's a long-range project. I haven't given up on that. The land bank would be directly involved, particularly, they own significant property along that route. And the town owns other land, particularly at the end of Spruce Street. They own considerable land there as far as that. So again, that's a long-range project, and I think it just needs to, it needs some attention, I think, to make it, to let people know that we indeed do have a plan for the Harbor Walk all the way from downtown to ultimately to the land bank properties at the Otterson property.
Alan,
Yes, Rick.
this is a little premature on chapter 91, but it's related to the Harbor Walk.
Yes.
When there's development along areas like Easton Street, it seems to me chapter 91 issues relate to the Harbor Walk. If we can get some commitment that there will be coordination in that effort, it's just a thought for us.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Chapter 91 is the next item there. And as far as that, I think we know what the goal is. We want to develop a list of the Chapter 191 licenses that have been issued. You would think that there would be a list sitting on somebody's desk, but apparently there isn't. And Lee can weigh in as far as the difficulties of.
Alan, it's a little more complex than that. Our Natural Resources Department has several large loose leaf notebooks with the Chapter 91 licenses in them, as they have been identified through the CONCOM applications. But it's not complete. In my mind, the only way that we're going to get a handle on this is a collaborative with the state, because the state owns the licenses. And I don't think the state has any interest in delegating authority to the town of Nantucket for all of the licenses. But that, in my mind, would be the only way that we would have every last license. Rick, you've been looking at this. Am I making any sense?
Well, you are. I think, to me, there's maybe one simple, I think it's simple, sort of approach that would get us on track to follow these as they come up. There is a partial list that was developed by the Mattocket and Nantucket Harbors plan. And it goes several pages in an Excel spreadsheet, so that's available. But when they come to CONCOM, and I can refer, for example, to the project on Quays Road, right next to the land bank property.
Mm-hmm.
At the CONCOM, there was a fair amount of discussion with Art Gasparo, and he'd be helpful here, about the need for that project to have an updated Chapter 91. And it seems to me it's awfully simple for the administrator, Jeff Carlson, just to let us know formally. And any paperwork that comes in, or we could follow it up. The same thing on this project on Easton Street, right next to the White Elephant. Significant project request coming into CONCOM. There's a lot of discussion, and there's going to be a new Chapter 91 or an update for that project. So if we could get Jeff just at the very least to send us a notification, he can delegate it to Joe Dodd, and we ought to be in business. So
is that, Mr. Through you, Alan, to Rick, is that in the paper? When they do their ads, is that is the Chapter 91 part in any of that or no?
You know,
I've never seen it.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think
No,
it's not
I don't-
part specifically of the Concom jurisdiction, but it comes up, for example, the Concom members were inquisitive about the passage in front of the beach structure in front of this Quay's
Right.
property. And how does it tie together? So it came up sort of naturally. No one
Yeah.
else brought it up.
It's just something Arthur Reed understands pretty well, I think, as far
Yep.
as somebody on Nantucket.
Right. The Chapter 91 issue, there was quite a bit of focus on it about a year or so ago. I know Lee and I went out to Swain's Neck and checked the bridge before the owners could do it, and there have been other licenses. For example, the land bank, when we put we built a dock on next to Odison, and you know, we had to go through that whole process, and we have a sign or a little sign on the structure itself saying that it is a Chapter 91 and so on. So it sounds like Jeff Carlson is really the key there. Would you agree, Lee, that Jeff Carlson?
I would, Alan, and if I may, I'd like to add one more thing. The Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee, as they start talking about protection of historic structures in the downtown area, you ought to have seen Harvey Young's face when they told him that how many times a year he would have 4 feet of water in his bicycle shop. But the point that I'm trying to make is these are all filled tidal lands. And as a consequence, filled tidal lands also need Chapter 91 licenses. That's why we have public restrooms in the Dreamland.
Exactly.
And so it is going to be a big issue.
No, it is a big issue. Again, it's something the land bank deals with on a pretty regular basis. Our Easy Street project that's underway on the corner there, you know, we had to go through lots of paperwork in order to, you know, get that approved.
Anyway, so, you know, Alan, it's just one more comment from Rick. At some point, maybe we just want to let the town manager know that all we really need from Jeff is a heads up. That'll get it on our radar. And I think he just needs a little jog, quite frankly.
Right. Good point. Good point. I know, you know, yeah, like so many of the town employees, they're doing so many different things that I agree. I think that they need some positive encouragement as far as becoming aware of these items. Okay, through the town manager in particular, that's a good way to do it. Okay, anything else on Chapter 91, the monitoring? The goals, let's see, we had defined goals.
By the way, Alan, with Hillary on the call, she may be familiar with Chapter 91 and may not, but Chapter 91 of the Massachusetts General Laws has a very broad title called Waterways, and subsections of it deal with Boston's harbor, and the section we're talking about are structures into the water pertinent or appurtenant to structures on the land. And so it's anything with a dock or a walkway or anything of that sort needs to be licensed by the state. Hillary, am I making sense?
Well, yes, I don't really know about this, but I do remember when we talked several weeks ago about the railway, you mentioned it and mentioned the Dreamland, and you know, we talked a little bit about Back Bay. So
again, our main interest is the fact that Chapter 91 does provide public access, and that's the key that we want to focus on.
It's like a special permit kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's all attached to these properties.
Yeah, exactly. So,
thank
okay.
you.
The next item on our list ties into the next item on our agenda, the island-wide Greenway trail map. The trail map project in the Nantucket Central Railroad, the route of the map, and so on. One of the goals under that was to map the existing island trail and footpath systems and to identify some of the missing links in there. What's happened on that project, the land bank has taken that project on in connection with the Conservation Foundation, the Linda Loring Foundation, Mass Audubon. Those are the primary organizations that have island trails on island. And the foundation, of course, is by far the largest landowner. They have probably the most miles of trails. The land bank is second, obviously. And then you get into Mass Audubon and Linda Loring Foundation. There are other conservation groups, of course, but those are the main ones that have trail systems. So those four groups have all agreed to get together to share the information as far as their trail systems and to publish them on a map. So the idea, and let's see if I have so here's a small version, if you can see it. And basically it has, this is the west end of the island, which is Madaket and so on. And you probably can't see it on here, but it does have the trail systems. We're starting on the west end of the island because those are those trails are pretty much defined. And then we're going to be moving to the east part of the island. The idea, the ultimate goal of this project is to have a map, an island-wide map that will show all the trails, where the different parking areas are for the trails, the names of those different areas, and the trail systems themselves. The different conservation groups are working on a way to mark those trails as well. So that's all kind of chugging along right now.
Alan, you held up a paper copy. I'm willing to bet there's a digital copy.
I would assume there is. I don't happen to have one. I just had a meeting the other day with our two field assistants who were developing doing the footwork on these trails and so on.
Okay.
So the next stage, once we get the map, we're going to publish a trail guide, which will have more detail on it about the different properties and more detail with the maps. But again, all the different properties will be represented on that. So that's coming along pretty well. Now, the railroad trail, this is something that Lee has been concerned with primarily. And the reason Hillary is on here because she has an interest in this project. I talked with Cormac Collier, and in fact, I talked with him again just this morning on this particular item. The Conservation Foundation is not anxious to do that trail, even though they have had someone from Toscana who has volunteered to take a piece of equipment in there and clear the trail and do that sort of thing. The main hesitation on the foundation's part about that trail is really twofold. First of all, Cormac, anyway, referred to it as kind of a boring trail because it goes through, basically it's all scrub oak in there. One of the interesting things about the rail trail is that it is elevated.
Yeah.
I've walked maybe half of it. I've walked the part that goes behind Russell's Way, the houses there, and by a lot of it was cleared 2 years ago, And so anyway, I'm quite familiar with that. But anyway, the Conservation Foundation, specifically Cormac, and also Karen Beatty, who's the director of science or the science manager for the property. The concern is that it is a scrub oak barrens. There's no shortage of scrub oak barrens on Nantucket for sure. I mean, I'm looking out here at probably many hundreds of acres of it right in front of me. So that was one of the concerns because it is habitat for the buck moth and some other things like that. But I think that his main concern is that he thinks it would be a boring trail, and you know, is it worth the maintenance? So that's still a work in progress. He is getting input from the guy from Toscana who's willing to go in and clear the trail. He's getting some input from residents of Tom Nevers West who live over there, because there is a trail that we put in probably 5 or 6 years ago that goes from Tom Nevers West there. There's the far end of it. I think it's Clarendon, maybe the end of the street there. Anyway, there's a trail that goes from there over to Lambert Field, which is part of the Mellon Estate, a wonderful little field that they used to fly the model airplanes on. And then the trail continues on to West Fork Pond, which is the beach with a parking area also on Foundation property. So that's a
Alan, hey, this is Lee.
Yes,
I'm going to suggest whether or not I have the time to do what I'm going to suggest is that we identify portions of the railroad that have obvious history and are very accessible. Tom Nevers intersection, Steamboat Wharf, the location of the engine house opposite Fayette Street, and see if we can't get a few historic signs in those locations to begin to demonstrate some history on this railroad.
Don't forget hatches.
right.
And I guess we could start it with the club car, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Drinks on me.
Exactly.
Alan.
We could put, hey, there, we could put a sign there. Now,
Alan, I just want to comment real bit. You I was actually had this written down with about John Pierce, and I appreciate everything you said. I actually can understand why Cormac is apprehensive about this. It could turn into something you wouldn't wish for, because I know that the plan was to kind of make it bikeable, maybe some dense grade and that kind of thing. And once you go that far, you're sort of, I don't know if that's what we want, you know. But Lee just made a point that I think is important, is that the railroad bed, there may be some areas where we want it to be exposed and used, in other areas we don't. Alan, would you agree that some of it might be worth enhancing to make not just marked, but walkable, usable, versus some of it is not?
well, right. Now, there are portions of it that is behind Naw Shop. If you go into the land bank property at where the playground is behind, there's an access point, and you can follow that trail. And at one point, as you're sort of behind Naw Shop, you're about 30 feet over the road edge on either or the ground on either side. And the land bank does maintain that portion of the trail. And then, of course, it sort of peters out as it gets up to where all the development is in the airport and that sort of thing. There was...
It doesn't peter out, Alan. It disappears onto the airport, and you can see it in the aerial photos. But I don't think the FAA was going to let us walk across that.
No, no, exactly. There is another portion of it that goes across the water company property, the Wannacomet property at Waters
Right.
Valley. And again, I've walked that section of it as well. It's a relatively short section, but it doesn't go anywhere. It's sort of, again, because of construction and the bike path that went by and all that sort of thing, again, it disappears. Now, there was another section that went out to I'm sorry, out to Surfside.
Right.
And the land bank owns that route as well from, I think it's from Plover Lane, which is off of,
Alan, you said Sconset. Do you mean Sconset or
no,
Surfside?
Surfside.
No, Surfside.
Yeah, when it went out to Surfside, we know that it went by Hatches, and we know what the route is. We have a map of the whole official route. And the land bank has cut a trail from, what is it, Blueberry, that goes in where, by Augie's junkyard.
Yeah, it's Blueberry.
Well, Plover, the Plover piece is where you could get to it,
Right.
Alan. You could get to it there, you get to it at the end of my street. It's not far through into the woods.
Exactly. And the land bank has cut a trail, and they've maintained that trail that goes all the way ultimately out to the beach. The trail, the railroad bed kind of dies out. It's when it gets down onto the beach, it's kind of, you can't really tell where the railroad bed was at that point. But that trail is, again, on land bank property. That one, it is maintained as well. There's been an issue as far as access at the end of Blueberry Lane because the property owner there has all sorts of junk in the road, cars, boats, you name it. It's kind of another little local junkyard back there. So anyway.
That's a good discussion for another, time. But that came up, what was it, about 5 years ago, Alan, or so, maybe 6, something like that.
Yeah.
And you guys have complete control of that property. It's on the GIS. It used to be Jensen.
Exactly. Yeah, we own 37 acres on the old railroad that goes down to the beach, and then we own a whole bunch down on the beach next to the wastewater treatment plant.
Doesn't that go out by Farrell's old house?
Yes.
Property there. That's what I thought, down the end. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, those are the two pieces. And so that's the update. As I say, there's been some resistance from the Conservation Foundation. Earlier, under the prior director, when Jim Lentowski was there, his concern about putting the railroad trail in was vandalism. His concern was that people would, campers would go and druggies would go and have fires and, so on. And so my comeback to that was that, well, if you get people using that trail as a walking path, then that sort of problem goes away. And we've seen that at a number of different properties that we own. So anyway, so that's the update on the rail trail. And Hillary, do you want to chime in on that issue?
Yes. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to really offer to help and assist because I think it's something that visitors to Nantucket and people who live here would like to know about. And it's part of the history. So, the Nantucket Historical Commission we don't need to do a lot of education and interpretation because there's so many nonprofits on Nantucket that do such a good job of that. But, where there might be a project that has to do with talking about our history or education or interpretation that's not really being covered by an existing nonprofit, I think that might be an area where we would step in and help. So I just have always been intrigued by the idea that there's a railroad here and the idea that there are artifacts And I also think there's no better way to start to understand and be excited about and motivated to preserve history than kind of walk in the footsteps of people who've been before and be in a place and try to see something about it and make it real, that history happened there. So I really like the idea on that level of talking more, teaching more about the existence of the railway. I reached out to Cormac as well and chatted with him, not as extensively as you have, Alan, and I don't have near the knowledge that the folks on this committee have about the details of Cormac, say to me more or less what he said to you, that it's just not a priority. The other reason why it's not a priority is he feels, even from a commuting perspective, it's all of this path is already covered. We already have the route that in terms of getting people from A to B, or people wanting to travel on their bikes or foot, that there's other ways to go the same way. So, often when rails are converted to trails, the reason is because of access and, affording some kind of new safe mode of protected pedestrian or bicycle transportation. And we already have that. But when I asked him more about, what they're doing with they have a conservation association or conservation foundation map, and I'm sorry, an app. They have an app that you can put on your phone with trails and information. So, I mean, just a few of the ideas that I'll just throw out would be, everybody walks around with a smartphone today, and I think these sorts of apps and maps have been around for a while. I don't know how much use they get, but I think that the trend will go that way. Even now during COVID times, it's common. You approach the juice bar and there's a long line, and they have scan this QR code and see our menu on your phone, and people are using it. So the idea of maybe developing these interpretive materials with all the great photos and having it keyed to a QR code that you would see if you're walking, using their app and walking, or on the Greenway Trail that you mentioned, Alan, or having a physical post or QR code, and maybe working together to identify locations where this could be. That might be an exciting collaboration.
All right. For the committee, Hillary, by the way, as you may remember, is chair of the Nantucket Historical Commission that's deals with sidewalks and other historical things on Nantucket, and that's why she's here. So.
Yeah. Yes, Ed.
Alan, I agree with Hillary totally. I think this is a great project to dovetail into just a similar project like the Greenways. I mean, I'm going to hold up a map here that I have. It's from Bermuda, and I remember when this was developed, and it's become quite a successful. I mean, it's a larger scale project, obviously, as far as the width of the access and whatnot. But it's become an innate part of people being able to wander around, and I think in these times and with these apps, I think that's the more accessible we can make certain things like this with a fleshed out history of certain junctures, the better.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I fully agree. And by the way, the trail on land bank property out to Surfside along the railroad trail, and the one behind is it Naushop or
Joshua.
Yeah.
Naushop.
Yeah. Those will be on this new map that we're putting together. One of the things I've been trying to do is to make sure that every trail gets on this map, and to do as you're suggesting here. So in terms of the railway, I haven't given up on the going out through Tom Nevers, because if anything, when I've walked it, I can just imagine what an incredible train ride that must have been, because there were no trees. All the vegetation. This is back, you know, when sheep were still roaming around eating all the brush and stuff. So you could
Yeah.
see all the way out to the ocean, and on
Like
those,
crossing the Nullarbor in Australia. It's a great empty stretch, but it still has a certain beauty about it.
yeah, exactly. So I personally will continue to lobby, or suggest, maybe is a better word, to the powers that be at the Conservation Foundation, that would make a good trail, and particularly where someone has already volunteered to come in and do the hard work, you know, cutting the trail. Okay.
I-
Yeah, Hillary?
Oh, Alan, thank you for the review of our historical commission. I always assume that everybody knows about the historical commission, and of course they don't, but it's the commission that is concerned with preservation of Nantucket's historic assets, and that includes the structures, the setting, the visual quality of our historic landmark, as well as the artifacts in the ground. And so we try to think creatively about what needs protecting, or what needs interpretation, what needs talking about, what needs elevation to the select board. We are advisory to the select board, which makes us a little different because the HDC is part of Plus. So there's a nice complementarity there. And we did recently have a joint meeting with the HDC that was great. I thought it was great. Anyway, I was happy to have it. But I guess as far as the railway goes, I mean, we could start with something as simple as asking, I mean, the trail is an ambitious, difficult, complicated thing. But I think putting up a post and maybe having some material that's accessible online is not that complicated. And Cormac offered Russell's Way, the crossing at Russell's Way, as being the obvious place for that to happen. And I think he'd be receptive to that. And then maybe there's some other places where, you know, the difference is the person who wants to go on an adventure and hears, oh, I can walk the path of the railway, I'm going to go do that, and it's a big adventure, versus the person just who happens to find themselves in a place and is invited to learn something about the place where they find themselves. And maybe like with that, maybe the two eventually converge, but at this point there might be some places that we could identify where we could put posts, and maybe we could write a grant or get some donations to create some online material. And if that online material, you know, got put together and existed, then it could be plugged into the conservation app, to it would be a digital asset that could be deployed in different ways by different people. And I just wanted to invite you all to let us know how we could help with that. We'd love to follow your lead, and we'd love to help.
Right. The reason we took this project on a number of years ago, when Joe Marklinger was on the committee, and Joe purchased the name Nantucket Central Railroad from the whatever bureau it is in Boston that controls those. So we do own the name Nantucket Central Railroad, and we can use it in whatever educational pieces we want. The reason that we got involved with this in the first place is because it is a part of Nantucket's history, and there are still physical remnants of it, and that's what we were trying to highlight. So, as I say, we haven't given up on the trail out to Tom Nevers. But you know, we do need to convince the powers that be that in fact this is a good idea. And as I say, they have been hearing from other parties, the fact that Hillary has weighed in, the fact that a couple of residents out in Tom Nevers West have weighed in. So anyway, again, a work in progress, and we're certainly going to keep that on our list as far as pursuing that project. All right, is there anything else on the Greenway?
Just one additional thing, Alan, to not forget is Bert's sign.
Oh,
Do
yes.
we still
right.
have that prototype, Lee? Do you know?
Nat, could you repeat, please?
Do we still have Bert Ryder's sign that he drew and we kind of adopted? That was like 4 years
Yeah,
ago.
let me bring you up to date, Nat. Bert worked with Paul McCarthy to
Oh,
create
okay.
a very precious, elaborate sign. It's probably more valuable than we want to leave for thieves.
In the middle of
But-
nowhere. No, I
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
But the copyright belongs to Paul.
Well, maybe we could have that at Hatches and Easy Street so they
Yeah,
can't
but
get
no, there's a
taken.
couple of places where it would be nice to have a little, the engine that could. This is the little locomotive that could.
I just don't want to forget that because that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That was definitely a nice. Oops. Okay, next item is takings list. I just want to quickly touch on that. The current list, and Lee sent out a new copy of that, or a copy of that this morning. The first one, Amelia Drive in Tacoma Way, that's already underway by the town.
Sorry,
That's before the select board already, so that's underway. Wynn Street is the next one, and that as you know, the town owns the dirt portion, the 1-lane dirt portion that comes out where you can't see on Hummock Pond Road.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the town portion. The private portion is the paved portion that, what's his name? Bruce poured when he did his development down there. So the paved,
Headsbury.
Yeah.
yeah,
Headsbury.
right. But the Wynn, it's part of Wynn Street, but the paved portion of Wynn Street is a private way as
Right.
opposed to the public way down there. Bruce did offer to donate it to the town. This was some years ago, back when Kara was our DPW chair. And Kara had some concerns about the quality of the construction. So I talked with Art Caspero, who was the engineer on the project, and he said that road is better than any town road because it had, he described how many layers of, hardener and stone and all that sort of thing underlying those paving works there. So anyway, that's a work in progress as well. One of the things that we had considered, if that link was ever made, that would connect the Hummock Pond Road bike path with the Madaket Road bike path via Wynn Street.
Yeah, that's the only logical answer, Alan, is making that one way to Vestal from Hummock or Milk Street Extension. I'm never gonna say that, so you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And making it one way in to Vestal, and there's your bike path.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, there's never gonna be a widening of Quaker Road, Alan, and you know why.
No, I know.
It should be, but even 2 feet would make a big difference, but,
No, I know. It was amazing. I go Quaker Road at least 2 or 3 times a day. And it's scary. I mean, people on bicycles, walkers, everybody in the street. That definitely is waiting for anyway. So Wynn Street is on our list of ones that we have. These are streets that we have recommended to the select board that they take. Warren's Landing, again, we had a detailed explanation from the head of the homeowners association
a few years ago.
a couple of years ago. They have a new person now in charge of the homeowners, and at the meeting, the president's meeting of the Civic League on this past Saturday, she mentioned the fact that the town should take those roads. So anyway, those are on our list. And Stone Alley, the town is
That's
working.
in
They
process,
haven't,
I think.
yeah, they haven't voted actually to take Stone Alley yet. It's on there. We recommended it. Ken Bogrand has been in discussions. They've sent a surveyor down there to
Yep.
measure it. And I guess there are some things that they need to work out, but that again is on the town's list of, and one of our recommendations. And the last one is Franklin Street. We did recommend, we voted, I should say. We voted to recommend to the town to take Franklin Street. And again, Ken Bogrand is working on that. Apparently there are some issues, as you can imagine, on that. Hard to believe, I know, it's hard to
We
believe.
need to get that.
Well,
we
they
need to get
do.
that
They do
taken.
need to get that. And so those are the ones on our list. So that's what, 1, 2.
When you brought that up, when was that? That was before COVID, when you brought that into this meeting. So I was over at Harriet Crivet's house fixing something one day after you brought that up, and I took a walk and looked at what you talked about, how you climb up those hills there to the cemetery, Alan.
Yes.
You know, growing up here, I hate to say this, I never looked at it that way before until you said it.
Mm-hmm.
That has to be preserved exactly the way it is and never have any problems. You know what I mean? That's all really hard soil, and how that's packed in like that. I mean, it doesn't erode. It's unique. It's like something you'd see in Ireland where it rains all the time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But where that guy put that curb, that will be our discussion at a later meeting. How should there be parking there is the question.
Exactly. And
And
that's,
it's not wide enough to park without, you know, jiggling around, which I'm not saying is right or wrong. I'm just talking strictly, how much land do we take back or try to, or do we just have it parking and that's it, the way it is? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the answer is, but that's going to be the big question.
well, the issue really came to a head when the
Cars were just sitting there. Cars were just hanging out there and they weren't ticketed because it wasn't a town road, right?
Well, it came to a head because that guy put the curbing in down on the corner of North Liberty Street.
Right. That's right.
Because people used to park there. And then all of a sudden they discovered that it was a private way, not a public way. The town had apparently never taken
It never got recorded.
Yeah,
Kind of
never
like
got
Meter,
recorded.
kind of like Meter Street, but older.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the issue there. Again, whenever I go by there and I check the cemeteries on a pretty regular basis, and there are 5 cars that are sitting there that have been there all winter, basically. And that's part of the issue. That's part of the issue. And so we made that case to Ken Bogrand, and that is, again, under consideration for taking by the select board. Rob McNeil also has weighed in on that one. So those are the 5 roads that are on our takings list. And of them, Amelia Drive, as I say, that one is pretty much underway. The other 4, with the exception of Stone Alley and Franklin Street, the select board is in consideration of those. They're compiling, I guess, the information that they need from Ken Bogrand. So anyway, those are the takings list. So between the takings list and the 3 areas, the Pleasant Street, Prospect Street, and Cliff Road, where there is no sidewalk, in my mind, those are really the most important issues. If we can resolve those issues, or get this, we aren't going to resolve them. We're going to we are advisory to the select board, but we need to make sure that our advice is heard. And I've used Ken Bogrand as the channel to do that because he reports directly to the select board. And anyway, so he's with our recommendations.
Alan, I hate to make the meeting go longer because I gotta start cooking dinner, but I believe that going back to that Fisher's Landing, that Warren's Landing thing, the request,
Yep.
wasn't that just the paved portion, as I recall? This is a while ago that this.
Oh,
came
yeah,
up.
yeah, that's correct. It was
Only the paved. You don't
Right.
want to say Warren's Landing like, too
Correct.
loosely. You'll be.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
Our recommendation was to support the homeowners association as far as taking the paved section.
Right.
Their issue is that when the pavement crumbles, that sort of thing, and the fact
Okay.
that cars speed there and there's no enforcement there. So
Yeah.
Alan?
Okay.
yes,
Nat,
Rick.
Nat, just to add a little complexity to it, when Warren's Landing Road diverts from Eel Point Road and goes to the water,
Circles back.
that's a public road.
I know that. And it circles back to about what, 220, 222, I think it is.
Oh, you mean house numbers?
220. It comes back around about a half a mile.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
it goes all the way down to the beach. In fact, we put one of our public way markers right at the beach, and there's a concrete one right at that corner there. So,
Say bye to
Rick,
Hillary. She's
Rick, you
leaving.
had a question or comment?
Well, but maybe a general comment. It's sort of triggered by the comment about crumbling roads at Fisher's Landing, Alan.
I think it
And
was
it
speed
seems-
humps they wanted.
It seems to me we have a lot of roads probably that are crumbling over the white line. And I get a little concerned as we want to expand our domain that we're not keeping up with our current road system. And Nat, you drive all over and are more alert to this than I am. But, I know you drive down the Quidnet Road and you can't even see the hole because it's filled with
Yeah.
water. And it's dangerous. So I'm concerned about the overall sort of budget impact of what we're talking about here.
That's, Rick, I know that I kind of had a feeling you were going to say that, and I agree with you about that, but I think we need to go back into the minutes or talk to Leslie. This is Leslie Forbes. This is a little while ago, this got brought up, and I swear, Alan, I think it was about the original drainage.
Well, there was an
They
original.
didn't have the engineering plan from the original subdivision, and also speed humps.
Well, the homeowners felt that there was an agreement with the town when that development went in,
Oh,
that they would pave the road, which they did, and that the town would then take that road. So their complaint really was not, because that road is actually in good shape, and they
yeah,
had
exactly.
maintained the road.
It is.
That I didn't mean to imply that it was a crumbling road, that particular part of it, but their complaint was that the town was reneging on their agreement that they had signed 20 years ago when that development was created. So
Okay,
that was the issue that they had for
okay.
that portion of the road.
We might have to dig into the subdivision language, and this isn't like Washing Pond where they just,
Yeah,
this is a lot different than that. So
I know.
I'm curious. I don't remember everything, but I do remember some stuff about the drainage and the speed humps, but I don't remember the agreement thing. So maybe you're onto something, Alan.
well, I think Rick's point is a valid one. I mean,
Yes.
when we recommend the taking of a road, there's a good reason for it. There's a good reason for taking Stone Alley or Franklin
Oh.
Street or, the other.
That's a
ones.
whole different reason.
Yeah. So, it's not as though we're out trying to, patch up all the roads. Although, we had on our list, Boulevard, Okawa, Lovers
Yeah.
Lane, and Monahasset. And
Yeah.
after 10 years of lobby. Now, of course, what happens when the select board wants to get something done, for example, the traffic situation out to the airport. Okay, I think that's what motivated them to finally take those ways from Surfside out to the airport. And, it wasn't just because the roads were crumbly, although those were really crumbly roads because the school buses wouldn't go on. The post office wouldn't deliver mail on them because they were in such bad shape. So
you got to go back to '09 with the area plan out there, Alan, in Ed Fawcett's living room. We get into that conversation.
I know.
But I know you're right.
Okay, are there?
Yeah,
Bill?
question. What is the benefit? What is the public benefit of the town taking that road?
Which road?
He means Warren's Landing.
Oh, Fisher's Landing. Well, according to the homeowners association,
I know that. I know what
they had agreed to it, and so they're, that's really where they're coming from. Now, the advantage of the town is that a lot of people use that to get out to 40th Pole, to get out to the end of the road there where they're,
you can't go through all the way. I know what you're talking about, Alan.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of public use on that road. It's not as though it's a, so the homeowners out there are saying, hey, wait a minute, we have all this traffic. The traffic races through here. They're on the way to the beach. So that's the benefit to the town of taking it, or the reason that the town should take that.
Well, I mean, the same argument could be made for, like you heard at the President's Breakfast this past week, like the Hummock Pond folks are dealing with all the traffic going down the private roads to the beach and all that. So I just, for people to be able to go to the beach, I mean, I think personally, I think the town has problems taking care of the roads that it currently owns. And same as, why would we take on more responsibility when we can't take care of what we've got?
Well, exactly. And I would say that the roads down in Hummock Pond don't meet that criteria.
Yeah, those are just dirt roads. If he's are you talking about with the new the new surf, the hole down there? There's a lot of activity down there. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, just the fact that the homeowners associations, the real reason they want to get out Fisher's Landing is because of the maintenance cost, and it's getting time that they got to do something.
Yeah.
And so
they're only talking about Warren's Landing, not Fisher's and all those. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, not the interior roads. Yeah.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah. So anyway, it's a slippery slope once we start. If it's something that was written out and the town's reneged on it, absolutely. But other than that, that was part of what they bought into when they bought into that development.
Just to clarify for
Not
the
to be a
record,
hard ass, but that's
when you, Alan, when you brought up the other takings, I mean, Franklin and Stone Alley and some of these roads that we want to take have nothing to do with improvements. They have to do with preservation, and that's what that's about, obviously. So it's like you have to press a different button when you talk about Warren's Landing Road versus some of these other ones. You know what I mean? So
I mean, if we're talking about preservation, we know we just lost Baltimore in Matticat, and the rest of those alphabet streets are all up for grabs if the homeowners want to push it. And so talk about changing.
We better find out about that. We got to make sure that that's true.
What's that?
If that's true, we got to make sure we should be check on the titles and who owns what and this and that, the recordings and all that. If that's true, that's the first time I've heard that.
Well, it was a move was afoot back 2 town meetings ago when Attorney Cohen tried to snag part of Washington between H and Oakland. So Mr. Turner, who's taken Baltimore, has been very successful in doing so. And, to me, that's a preservation land taking as opposed to relieving Warren's Landing from taking care of Warren's Landing Road.
Just to comment on that as well, it seems to me that clearly in that case, the public had passed and repassed over that for what, 70 years? And there was no reason not to enforce that right, is my opinion. So.
Right. Now, the advice that we gave to the head of the Fisher's Landing group, this was several years ago, was to dig out the original, whatever the documentation they're claiming had the agreement in it, and get a lawyer and press it that way. I mean, I think it was Nat's point or Bill's point, that if in fact there is an agreement that the town is not following through on, then that's a legal question.
Right.
And that's, and that was the advice that we gave to, I've forgotten her name, but the woman who was in charge of the association at that time. So, okay, any other comments, general comments about where we're going, what we're doing?
I have a question, Alan. I don't know if this is thank you. I don't know if this is the right time to ask. I put it in the chat if you all can hear that, but it's related to these public roads, private roads, and the confusion that can happen when someone thinks a public road is private or vice versa. I was approached and I had a conversation with a homeowner on Angola Street.
Sorry, which street?
Angola.
Oh, Angola, yes.
And I don't know if you've noticed that it's been covered with gravel.
Yes, that is, by the way, a 1799 public way.
Right.
Yeah.
So that one, there's no question that's a public way.
Yes.
And yes, there's gravel. They have improved, I guess, the road, or at least one of the homeowners.
Also North Mill Street. So, and in fact, there are a number of signs at the intersection of Angola and North Mill that say
That's for subdivision purposes, right?
You're right.
Yeah.
private way.
And that's
The Mueller development.
Right.
Mueller.
So the resident, really doesn't like the gravel. I personally don't like the gravel either, but also I just think, for one individual to decide that they're going to turn a dirt road into a gravel road, just do it, and then also put up private way signs. I don't know what the status of North Mill Street is, but it's concerning. So I just would love to have your perspective on that.
Never going to be able to cook dinner now.
Yeah,
Sorry.
right. North Mill Street is a private way. We had a lengthy discussion about that with back when oh shoot,
Bartlett, Alan, it was Bernie Bartlett.
yeah, I know. Bernie
Yeah.
Bartlett was the one who the neighbor there, and we looked into it, and according to Andrew Vorse, that is a private way. If you've been through there recently, I was down to talk with Mr. Mueller a while ago because he wanted to change the entrance off of Prospect Street. And I said, well, wait a minute, you really need to go to the powers that be, the planning board first, to see if you can do this and et cetera. But that is definitely a private way.
Well, okay.
They owned both sides. It was land coded and they owned both sides of the road.
Right.
And they're giving us I believe we're getting a, bike path or some kind of path through there to
Okay.
Prospect.
Yeah, there's a sign.
Part of that agreement.
Yeah, there's a sign that says pedestrians and bicyclists welcome.
Yeah. And then also, you have to remember too, Alan, it's like a drainage little thing there too, issue.
Exactly.
So there's no.
So Hillary, that has a separate history, that little piece of North Mill. But the other section, Alan knows all about, the part at Mill Hill Park. That's still on the ground, correct, Alan?
So the homeowner has asked you know, she met me because she wants to put, in fact, I need to talk to the land bank about this. She wants to put a little plaque up acknowledging Arthur Cooper and Angola Street, which I think is a really nice idea. But she wants to have some resolution about this gravel. Is this something your committee would advise her on or help with?
God.
It's a private way. I mean, it could be.
No,
No.
Angola Street.
Oh,
Yeah,
and go.
and Angola is definitely public. I know that the DPW director, Rob McNeil, is aware of that. The question was raised with him a while ago. So I have no idea what, I've had several calls, by the way, from people who were concerned about this. And, you know, so as far as the situation, whether the property owner could have done that or should have done that or whatever, it is a public way and they should probably have had permission to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they ever had a permit or anything like
I
that.
mean, there isn't anyone driving down Angola Street unless they have to. That's the catch. And no one's going to notice or say anything about something like this. But that's one of those roads, Alan. There's a lot of water when it rains from those
exactly.
houses. The houses on the left, it's just like, you know, so they're probably trying to kind of mitigate some of the mud, but that would be my guess. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Exactly. There's
You know?
a very steep hill on the right-hand side as you're going out toward Pleasant Street. And all that water runs down there.
Yeah.
The land bank owns the Garden by the Sea piece down there. So I'm quite familiar with the condition.
I think the gravel was put there in preparation for the future development, to be quite frank, as supporting, you know, where they'll be accessing at some point trucks and things like that, quite frank.
Well, that's true, because there's a question of how people are going to access those lots. I asked Mr. Mueller that, and he had, you know, he said, "Oh, the planning board has approved all."
Wow. I mean, that's,
yeah.
I would say that's going to be a mixed bag of, you know, between Mill Street and North Mill and the other, you know, Candle House Lane. I mean, it's, you know, you kind of get there how you get there, right?
Exactly.
That's not that easy to answer that question.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
Well, so anyway, the planning board did approve that subdivision that the Muellers put in. So, you know, presumably
Yes.
there's access somewhere. Great. Okay. Is there any other comments? Anybody else want to add anything to the discussion so far? I know we're at the end of our agenda, and wow, we're way over time, aren't we?
yes, we are.
Yeah, we are. So anybody have anything else?
Alan,
Adjourn?
Alan, as we sign off, I'll try and work with Erica to make sure that I have the correct account so that I can open things up 5 to 10 minutes before our next meeting. I'll work on that.
Great.
Thank you.
And again, yeah, and thank you, Lee, for really, I mean, this is yeoman duty here. If it was up to me, we wouldn't be having this meeting.
Oh,
I have trouble just logging
I
in.
agree.
My
So anyway.
pleasure, guys. Next time smoother. Okay, hit your red button.
Motion to
Okay,
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
all right,
Okay.
I declare we're at the